Aiko Tanaka was not your typical billionaire's wife. Unlike the flashy socialites who frequented high-end events and graced magazine covers, Aiko preferred a life of simplicity. She valued quiet moments over crowded parties, meaningful conversations, over superficial small talk. Her husband, Hiroshi Nakamura, was one of Japan's most successful entrepreneurs, a man whose tech empire had revolutionized industries worldwide. Yet despite his immense wealth and influence, Aiko had always chosen to stay out of the spotlight. She was content being the supportive partner behind the scenes, focusing on her passions for art, literature, and philanthropy. Their home in Tokyo was a blend of modern elegance and traditional Japanese aesthetics. It was a sanctuary where they could escape the chaos of their busy lives. On a crisp autumn morning, as golden sunlight filtered through the paper screens of their living room, an envelope arrived at their doorstep. The return address indicated it was from an exclusive charity gala, hosted by one of the city's oldest and most prestigious social clubs. Hiroshi picked up the invitation during breakfast, glancing at it briefly before setting it aside, but something caught Aiko's eye. As she reached for the envelope, her fingers brushed against the thick, creamy paper. Opening it carefully, she scanned the contents. The event promised to be glamorous, an evening filled with fine dining, live music, and speeches from some of the country's most influential figures. However, there was one glaring omission: her name. The invitation was addressed solely to Hiroshi Nakamura. No mention of "and guest." No acknowledgement of Aiko whatsoever. At first, she felt a pang of disappointment, but she quickly dismissed it. After all, these kinds of oversights weren't uncommon. In elite circles, people often saw her as just the wife, a silent figure standing beside her powerful husband. Still, the exclusion stung more than she cared to admit. Later that evening, as they sat together sipping green tea, Aiko mentioned the invitation casually. "Did you see this?" she asked, holding up the envelope. "It looks like quite the affair." Hiroshi glanced at her, then at the invitation. His brow furrowed slightly as he realized what she meant. "They didn't include you," he said, his tone calm but laced with concern. "It's fine," Aiko replied with a soft smile, brushing off the comment. "These things happen. Maybe they forgot." But Hiroshi knew better. This wasn't merely forgetfulness. It was a reflection of how society viewed Aiko, someone whose presence wasn't deemed important enough to acknowledge. He admired her humility, but he also understood the weight of such slights. Over the years, he had faced his share of prejudice as a self-made billionaire in a world dominated by old money elites. Now, seeing Aiko treated this way struck a nerve. As the days passed, Hiroshi couldn't shake off the feeling that something needed to be done. He loved Aiko deeply and respected her decision to lead a low-profile life, but he also believed in standing up against injustice. He began researching the organization behind the gala. What he discovered only fueled his resolve. The social club responsible for the event was known for its rigid exclusivity, catering primarily to families with centuries-old legacies. Self-made individuals like Hiroshi were tolerated, if they brought money, but rarely embraced fully. And women like Aiko, who chose to remain understated rather than flaunt their status, were practically invisible. One afternoon, Hiroshi approached Aiko while she was arranging flowers in the garden. "I've been thinking about the gala," he said gently. "Do you really want to go?" She paused, looking up at him with curiosity. "Not particularly," she admitted. "Why do you ask?" "I think we should make them regret leaving you off the list," Hiroshi said, his voice steady but tinged with determination. Aiko chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Oh, Hiroshi, don't bother. It's not worth it." But Hiroshi wasn't joking. For him, this wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about ensuring that Aiko and others like her were never overlooked again. He had an idea, one that would send ripples through the very foundations of the elite world that had dismissed them. Over the next few weeks, Hiroshi quietly set his plan into motion. First, he instructed his legal team to review all sponsorship, agreements between his companies and the charity hosting the gala. Within days, key funding streams dried up, leaving the organizers scrambling to cover costs. Then he announced the creation of a new foundation dedicated to supporting underrepresented groups in Japan: immigrant women, minority entrepreneurs, and young innovators. He named it the Aiko Foundation, dedicating it to her vision of inclusivity and empowerment. News of the foundation spread rapidly, capturing attention far beyond the confines of Tokyo's elite circles. International media outlets praised Hiroshi's bold move, highlighting the stark contrast between his actions and the outdated practices of traditional social clubs. Meanwhile, whispers circulated among the upper crust about Hiroshi's motivations. Was this retaliation, or simply a statement of values? For Aiko, the entire situation was surreal. She hadn't asked for any of this, yet she couldn't deny the impact it was having. People who had once ignored her now sought her opinion, eager to align themselves with her newfound prominence. Through it all, Aiko remained grounded, focusing on the work of the foundation and the positive changes it could bring. And so, what began as a simple oversight, a missing name on an invitation, became the catalyst for something much larger. Hiroshi's quiet rebellion wasn't just about vindication. It was about rewriting the rules of a system that had long favored privilege over merit. Together, he and Aiko were proving that true power comes not from titles or invitations, but from using one's influence to create a better, fairer world. Hiroshi Nakamura wasn't a man who acted impulsively. He was known for his meticulous planning, his ability to think several steps ahead, and his calm demeanor even in the face of chaos. So, when he decided to address the slight against Aiko, he didn't rush into anything. Instead, he took his time, carefully considering how best to handle the situation. After all, this wasn't just about an invitation. It was about challenging the deeply ingrained attitudes that had allowed such an oversight to happen in the first place. The first thing Hiroshi did was dig deeper into the organization behind the gala. He wanted to understand who they were, what they stood for, and why they operated the way they did. Through his research, he uncovered a network of old money families who prided themselves on their exclusivity. These were people whose fortunes stretched back generations, whose names carried weight simply because of their lineage. They viewed self-made individuals like Hiroshi as outsiders, people who had earned their wealth but lacked the pedigree to truly belong. What bothered Hiroshi most was the way these elites treated women like Aiko. To them, she was invisible, not because she lacked accomplishments or intelligence, but because she didn't fit their narrow definition of importance. She wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't seek attention or try to outshine others. In their eyes, her quiet strength and humility made her easy to overlook. And while Aiko herself might have shrugged it off, Hiroshi couldn't ignore the injustice of it. As he reflected on the situation, Hiroshi realized that simply confronting the organizers wouldn't be enough. Telling them they had made a mistake would likely result in empty apologies and hollow promises to do better next time. No. If he wanted to make a real impact, he needed to take a different approach, one that would force them to confront their biases and reconsider their values. His plan began to take shape over the course of several weeks. First, he instructed his team to review all sponsorship agreements between his companies and the charity hosting the gala. It turned out that Hiroshi's businesses provided significant funding for many of the events organized by the social club. Without his financial support, the gala and other similar events would struggle to maintain their lavish standards. Knowing this gave Hiroshi leverage, but he didn't intend to use it recklessly. Instead, he quietly withdrew his sponsorship, citing a need to redirect resources toward causes that aligned more closely with his family's values. The reaction was swift. Within days, rumors began circulating about Hiroshi's decision. Members of the social club panicked, realizing the implications of losing such a major donor. Some speculated that Hiroshi was upset about the guest list snub, while others dismissed it as a coincidence. Either way, the sudden loss of funding sent shockwaves through their tightly knit community. Organizers scrambled to find alternative sponsors, but few could match Hiroshi's generosity or influence. While the fallout from his withdrawal played out behind the scenes, Hiroshi turned his attention to something far more meaningful: creating a legacy that honored Aiko's spirit. He envisioned a foundation that would empower underrepresented groups in Japan: women, immigrants, minorities, and young innovators who often faced barriers to success. The idea was simple yet powerful: to provide opportunities for those who, like Aiko, might otherwise be overlooked. He named the foundation after her, the Aiko Foundation, and poured his energy into making it a reality. From scholarships for aspiring female entrepreneurs to mentorship programs for marginalized youth, the foundation quickly gained traction. Hiroshi ensured that every initiative reflected Aiko's core beliefs: inclusivity, compassion, and the belief that everyone deserves a chance to shine. News of the foundation spread rapidly, capturing the attention of both local and international media. Journalists marveled at the contrast between Hiroshi's actions and the outdated practices of traditional social clubs. Articles highlighted the irony of a billionaire choosing to uplift the underprivileged rather than cater to the elite. Social media buzzed with praise for Hiroshi and Aiko, with many calling them role models for using wealth and influence to drive positive change. For Aiko, the entire experience was surreal. She hadn't asked for any of this, nor had she expected Hiroshi to go to such lengths on her behalf. Yet she couldn't deny the profound impact the foundation was having. People who had once ignored her now sought her input, eager to learn from her perspective. Invitations poured in, from universities, nonprofits, and even government agencies, all wanting to collaborate with the Aiko Foundation. At first, Aiko felt overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight. She had always preferred staying in the background, letting her actions speak for themselves. But Hiroshi encouraged her to embrace her new role, reminding her of the power she held to inspire others. "This isn't about you," he told her one evening as they sat together in their garden. "It's about showing people what's possible when we lift each other up." Slowly but surely, Aiko began to step into the limelight. She attended meetings, gave interviews, and shared her vision for a more inclusive society. Her quiet confidence and genuine passion won over even the harshest critics. Those who had once dismissed her as just the wife now recognized her as a leader in her own right, a woman whose humility masked a fierce determination to create change. Meanwhile, the social club responsible for the original gala found itself in an increasingly precarious position. Without Hiroshi's funding, they struggled to maintain their usual level of extravagance. Attendance at their events dwindled as members grew wary of associating with an organization that seemed out of touch with modern values. Behind closed doors, heated debates erupted about how to adapt to a changing world. Some argued for doubling down on tradition, while others pushed for reform. The rift threatened to tear the club apart. Through it all, Hiroshi remained calm and focused. He knew that true change wouldn't come overnight, but he also knew that the seeds had been planted. By withdrawing his support and launching the Aiko Foundation, he had forced the social club, and society at large, to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, bias, and exclusion. More importantly, he had given Aiko a platform to share her voice with the world. As the weeks turned into months, Hiroshi watched with pride as Aiko blossomed into a symbol of resilience and grace. What had started as a simple oversight, an invitation that failed to include her name, had transformed into a movement that challenged the very foundations of elitism. Together, they were proving that true power lies not in titles or invitations, but in the ability to inspire others and effect meaningful change. The ripple effects of Hiroshi's actions began to spread far beyond what anyone had anticipated. The social club, once a bastion of exclusivity and tradition, was now in turmoil. Without Hiroshi's financial backing, the gala they had planned with such grandeur was on the verge of collapse. Organizers frantically scrambled to find new sponsors, but few were willing, or able, to step in and fill the void left by one of Japan's wealthiest men. Even those who sympathized with the club's predicament couldn't ignore the growing public sentiment against their outdated practices. It seemed that Hiroshi's decision to withdraw his support had struck a nerve, not just within the club itself but across society at large. Meanwhile, the ICO Foundation continued to gain momentum. Its mission resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, those who had long felt marginalized or overlooked by institutions like the social club. Stories of individuals benefiting from the Foundation's programs began to surface, further amplifying its impact. A young immigrant woman named May, for instance, received a scholarship that allowed her to pursue her dream of becoming an engineer. A single father struggling to provide for his family found stability through a mentorship program that connected him with job opportunities. These stories, shared widely on social media and in news outlets, painted a vivid picture of hope and transformation. As word of the Foundation's success spread, pressure mounted on the social club to address the situation. Their reputation, once untouchable, was now under scrutiny. Critics accused them of perpetuating elitism and failing to adapt to a changing world. Members grew divided, with some clinging stubbornly to tradition while others pushed for reform. In the midst of this chaos, a small group of leaders within the club decided to take drastic action. They would reach out directly to Aiko. It started with a formal letter delivered to Hiroshi and Aiko's home. Written in polished, apologetic tones, it expressed regret for the oversight regarding the gala invitation and extended a belated invitation to Aiko, not just as a guest, but as the keynote speaker at their next major event. The letter emphasized their desire to rectify past mistakes and embrace inclusivity. At first glance, it seemed sincere, even heartfelt. But Hiroshi wasn't fooled. He suspected it was less about genuine remorse and more about salvaging their crumbling image. When Aiko read the letter, she felt conflicted. Part of her wanted to decline outright, dismissing the gesture as too little, too late. After all, she hadn't sought recognition or validation from these people. Their opinion of her mattered little in the grand scheme of things. Yet another part of her saw an opportunity, a chance to speak directly to the very audience that needed to hear her message most. She turned to Hiroshi for advice. "What do you think?" she asked one evening, as they sat together in their living room. The soft glow of lanterns illuminated her thoughtful expression. Hiroshi leaned back in his chair, considering the question carefully. "It's up to you," he replied. "But if you choose to accept, imagine the impact you could have. You'd be speaking to people who desperately need to hear what you have to say." Aiko nodded slowly, weighing his words. She knew Hiroshi was right. This wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about using her platform to inspire change. If she could help shift the mindset of even a handful of influential figures, it might pave the way for broader societal progress. After much deliberation, Aiko agreed to attend the event, but on her own terms. She insisted that her speech focus on themes of inclusivity, resilience, and the importance of recognizing every individual's worth. The organizers, eager to repair their damaged reputation, readily accepted her conditions. They hoped her appearance would signal a turning point for the club, demonstrating their commitment to embracing diversity and modern values. On the day of the event, anticipation ran high. The venue was a sprawling estate adorned with chandeliers and ornate decorations, a stark contrast to the understated elegance Aiko preferred. As guests arrived, whispers filled the air. Some were curious to see how Aiko would handle the situation, while others remained skeptical, convinced that this was merely a publicity stunt. When Aiko finally took the stage, the room fell silent. Dressed in a simple yet elegant kimono, she exuded a quiet confidence that commanded attention. Her presence alone was enough to captivate the audience, but it was her words that truly left an impression. "Good evening," she began, her voice calm and steady. "I want to thank you for inviting me here today. When I first learned of this opportunity, I hesitated, not because I doubted my ability to contribute, but because I wondered whether my voice would truly be heard or valued." Her opening line drew murmurs of discomfort from the crowd, forcing them to confront the reality of their past actions. Aiko didn't shy away from addressing the elephant in the room. Instead, she used it as a springboard to share her vision for a more inclusive future. I believe that true greatness lies not in titles or wealth, but in our capacity to uplift others, she continued. Too often we judge people based on superficial criteria, where they come from, how they look, or what name they carry. But when we do this, we miss out on the richness of human experience. We overlook the potential of individuals who, though different from us, have so much to offer. She went on to recount stories of resilience, from her own life and from the lives of those supported by the Aiko Foundation. She spoke of immigrants who had overcome immense challenges to build better futures for themselves and their families. She highlighted the contributions of women who had shattered glass ceilings despite facing discrimination. And she reminded the audience that privilege comes with responsibility, the duty to use one's influence to create opportunities for others. By the time she finished, the room was utterly still. There were no polite claps or perfunctory nods. Instead, there was a profound sense of reflection. Many in the audience wiped away tears, moved by the sincerity and depth of her message. Even the harshest critics found themselves nodding in agreement, unable to deny the truth of her words. After the speech, several attendees approached Aiko to express their gratitude. Some admitted that they had underestimated her, while others confessed that her words had opened their eyes to blind spots they hadn't realized existed. For the first time, Aiko stepped into the spotlight not as Hiroshi's wife or just another guest, but as a leader whose wisdom transcended social hierarchies. Backstage, Hiroshi waited patiently, a proud smile on his face. When Aiko joined him, he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You were incredible," he said softly. "They'll never forget this night." Aiko smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced before. "Maybe," she replied. "But, more importantly, I hope they remember the message and act on it." That evening marked a turning point, not just for the social club, but for Aiko herself. She had transformed what could have been a moment of humiliation into an opportunity to drive meaningful change. Through her courage and conviction, she had challenged the status quo and inspired others to rethink their values. And though she never sought recognition, she had earned something far greater: respect. The aftermath of Aiko's speech at the social club's event was nothing short of transformative. Her words had struck a chord so deep that it reverberated far beyond the walls of the opulent venue. For the first time in its long history, the club found itself facing not just criticism, but introspection. Members who had once prided themselves on their exclusivity were now questioning whether their values aligned with the world they lived in, a world that was rapidly evolving and demanding accountability. In the days following the event, media coverage exploded. Journalists hailed Aiko's speech as a watershed moment, a rare instance where someone had dared to challenge the entrenched elitism of Japan's upper crust, not with anger or bitterness, but with grace and wisdom. Clips of her speech went viral online, sparking conversations about privilege, representation, and the importance of inclusivity. People from all walks of life shared their thoughts, many expressing admiration for Aiko's courage and poise. Even critics who had initially dismissed the situation as petty drama found themselves moved by her message. Within the social club itself, tensions simmered. Some members argued that inviting Aiko had been a mistake, claiming her presence only highlighted their shortcomings. Others, however, saw an opportunity to reinvent the organization. A faction of younger, more progressive members pushed for sweeping reforms, urging the club to adopt policies that reflected modern values. They proposed initiatives like opening membership to individuals from diverse backgrounds, hosting events focused on social issues, and partnering with organizations like the Aiko Foundation. The debate grew heated, dividing the club into two camps, those clinging to tradition and those advocating for change. At one particularly contentious meeting, tempers flared as both sides aired their grievances. One elderly member slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "We've always done things this way, why should we change now?" In response, a younger woman stood up, her voice steady but firm. Because the world is changing, she said. If we don't adapt, we'll become irrelevant. Amidst the turmoil, Aiko remained unfazed. She hadn't delivered her speech to incite division or force the club to overhaul itself overnight. Her goal had been simple: to plant seeds of thought that might eventually blossom into action. And indeed, signs of progress began to emerge. The club's leadership announced plans to form a diversity committee tasked with evaluating their practices and proposing reforms. While some viewed this as merely symbolic, others saw it as a step in the right direction. For Hiroshi, watching these developments unfold was deeply satisfying. He had always believed in the power of influence over retaliation, and Aiko's success proved him right. By choosing to address the slight against her with dignity rather than resentment, she had achieved something far greater than revenge. She had inspired meaningful reflection and dialogue. Hiroshi often joked to Aiko that her quiet strength was more formidable than any public confrontation could ever be. But Aiko herself wasn't focused on accolades or vindication. Instead, she channeled her energy into expanding the reach of the Aiko Foundation. The attention generated by her speech brought in new donors, volunteers, and collaborators eager to support its mission. Universities reached out to partner on research projects exploring gender equality and social mobility. Corporations offered funding and resources to scale the foundation's programs. Nonprofits working in underserved communities sought guidance on how to replicate its model. One of the most impactful initiatives launched during this period was a mentorship program connecting successful professionals with young people from marginalized backgrounds. Participants were paired based on shared interests and goals, creating opportunities for personal growth and career development. One such pairing involved a retired architect named Kenji and a teenage girl named Yumi, who dreamed of becoming an urban planner. Through regular meetings and hands-on projects, Kenji helped Yumi build confidence in her abilities, while introducing her to networks she might never have accessed otherwise. By the end of the year, Yumi had secured an internship at a top architectural firm, a testament to the program's potential to transform lives. As the Aiko Foundation flourished, Aiko continued to embrace her role as its figurehead. Though she still preferred quiet moments in her garden to the spotlight, she recognized the importance of visibility in driving change. She accepted invitations to speak at conferences, universities, and community events, sharing her vision with audiences around the globe. Her speeches became known for their blend of humility and conviction, inspiring listeners to reflect on their own roles in creating a fairer, more inclusive society. Back at home, Hiroshi marveled at the transformation he witnessed in his wife. Once content to remain in the shadows, Aiko had emerged as a beacon of hope and resilience. He often teased her about how much busier their lives had become since the gala incident. "Remember when you used to complain about having too much free time?" he quipped one evening as they reviewed the foundation's latest reports. Aiko laughed, shaking her head. "I think I miss those days sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember the faces of the people we're helping, their smiles, their gratitude, and I know it's worth it." Their bond had grown stronger through the experience, forged in mutual respect and admiration. Hiroshi admired Aiko's ability to turn adversity into opportunity, while Aiko appreciated his unwavering support and belief in her potential. Together, they formed a partnership that embodied the very principles they championed: collaboration, empathy, and a commitment to lifting others up. Meanwhile, the social club's efforts to reform gained traction. Slowly but surely, changes began to take shape. Membership criteria were broadened to include individuals from non-traditional backgrounds. Events started featuring speakers and panelists from underrepresented communities. Partnerships with organizations like the Aiko Foundation became a cornerstone of their programming. While skeptics doubted the sincerity of these efforts, others acknowledged that even incremental progress was a step forward. By the end of the year, the club hosted a special ceremony to honor Aiko's contributions. It was a stark contrast to the gala that had excluded her name just months earlier. This time she was the guest of honor, surrounded by people eager to celebrate her achievements. As she accepted a plaque commemorating her impact, Aiko couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The journey had been unexpected, challenging, and ultimately rewarding. A reminder that even the smallest actions can spark profound change. For Hiroshi and Aiko, the experience reinforced their belief in the power of compassion and perseverance. They had faced prejudice and exclusion, but instead of letting it define them, they had used it as fuel to create something extraordinary. Their story served as a testament to the idea that true strength lies not in dominance or retribution, but in the ability to inspire others to see the world and themselves differently. Months turned into years, and the legacy of Aiko's quiet rebellion continued to grow. What had started as a single oversight, an invitation that failed to include her name, had blossomed into a movement that reshaped not only the social club, but also the broader landscape of privilege and inclusion in Japan. The Aiko Foundation became a household name, synonymous with empowerment, resilience, and progress. Its programs touched countless lives, creating opportunities for those who had long been overlooked by society. For Aiko, life took on a rhythm she never could have imagined. While she still cherished her quiet moments, tending to her garden, reading ancient poetry, or sipping tea under the cherry blossoms, she also embraced her role as a leader and advocate. She traveled across the country, visiting schools, community centers, and corporate offices to share her vision of inclusivity. Her speeches were no longer confined to elite circles. They reached ordinary people who saw themselves reflected in her words. Whether addressing a room of executives or a group of young students, Aiko spoke with the same authenticity and warmth that had first captivated audiences at the social club. One of the most remarkable aspects of Aiko's journey was how it inspired others to step forward and make their voices heard. Women who had once hesitated to pursue leadership roles found courage in her example. Immigrants struggling to navigate a new culture discovered hope in the stories she shared. Young innovators from rural areas realized they didn't need connections or wealth to achieve their dreams. They just needed determination and support. Aiko's story became proof that even the quietest voices can spark monumental change when given the chance to be heard. The social club, too, underwent a transformation that few would have predicted. Once a bastion of exclusivity, it gradually evolved into an institution that championed diversity and equality. Under the guidance of its newly formed diversity committee, the club implemented policies aimed at breaking down barriers. Memberships were extended to individuals from varied backgrounds, including entrepreneurs, artists, and activists. Events shifted focus from mere networking opportunities to platforms for discussing pressing social issues like climate change, education reform, and gender parity. Perhaps the most symbolic moment came when the club hosted its annual gala, 2 years after Aiko's keynote speech. This time the theme was inclusion, building bridges, not walls. Attendees included not only traditional elites, but also representatives from marginalized communities, nonprofit leaders, and grassroots organizers. At the center of it all stood Aiko, invited back not as a guest, but as the honorary chairperson. As she addressed the audience, her words carried a sense of fulfillment and optimism. "We've come a long way," she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But let us not forget that true progress is not measured by grand gestures or public declarations. It's measured by the small, everyday actions we take to uplift one another, by choosing kindness over judgment, by seeing value in every person, regardless of where they come from or what they look like." Her message resonated deeply, earning a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. For many in the room, it was a reminder of how far they had come, and how much work still lay ahead. Behind the scenes, Hiroshi watched with pride as his wife transformed into a symbol of quiet strength and dignity. He often joked that he had married someone extraordinary without fully realizing it until now. But there was no denying the profound impact Aiko had made, not just on him, but on everyone fortunate enough to cross her path. Together, they proved that partnership wasn't about dominance or hierarchy. It was about supporting each other's strengths and amplifying them for the greater good. As the years passed, the ripple effects of Aiko's influence extended beyond Japan. International organizations began reaching out to collaborate with the Aiko Foundation, eager to adopt its model of empowerment. Universities named scholarships after her, ensuring that future generations of trailblazers would carry her torch. Books were written about her journey, highlighting the power of humility and perseverance in the face of adversity. Even Hollywood expressed interest in adapting her story into a film, a prospect that made Aiko laugh heartily. "I'm just a simple woman who loves flowers and books," she told Hiroshi one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "I never asked for any of this attention." "And yet you've changed the world," Hiroshi replied, smiling. "That's the thing about you, Aiko. You don't seek recognition, but your light shines so brightly that people can't help but notice." Their bond remained as strong as ever, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. They balanced each other perfectly, Hiroshi's boldness complementing Aiko's grace, his strategic mind harmonizing with her intuitive wisdom. Together they demonstrated that true power lies not in titles or wealth, but in the ability to inspire others to see the best in themselves and the world around them. Looking back on everything that had transpired, Aiko felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was grateful for Hiroshi's unwavering support, for the opportunities she'd been given to make a difference, and for the resilience she'd discovered within herself. Most of all, she was grateful for the countless individuals whose lives had intersected with hers along the way, people who had taught her the true meaning of courage, compassion, and community. In the end, Aiko's story wasn't just about vindication or proving a point. It was about challenging outdated systems and replacing them with something better. It was about showing the world that everyone has value, regardless of how loudly they speak or how visible they are. And it was about proving that even the smallest acts of kindness and inclusion can create waves of change that last a lifetime. Years later, when historians looked back on this chapter of Japanese society, they would point to Aiko Tanaka as a pivotal figure, a woman who, through her quiet strength and unshakable belief in humanity, helped redefine what it meant to belong. Her name, once forgotten on an invitation, had become etched in history, not because of wealth or status, but because of the indelible mark she left on the hearts and minds of those she touched.